Hey guys, I haven't uploaded a video in a while. Um and if you're watching this, you may have never seen my other videos. I kind of hope in a way that that's going to be the case. I don't mean to sound selfish, but I honestly do hope this video goes viral because I think it needs to. Um I think I'm going to make a lot of important points here that need to be heard. And so you can probably already tell just by sound of my voice, maybe, that I struggle with anxiety. I'm speaking here in a public setting. It's late at night. Other people might be able to hear me. I don't know. But I felt the need to to make this video after I saw a video from a channel called Never Give Up, called Being Ugly My Experience. Now, I'm not claiming I'm ugly. Uh, Really, when I really think about it, I don't think I've ever had anyone ever call me ugly. Um, I don't think I've ever had that realization before. I've had someone say I'm not particularly attractive in a way, but that's the most. And I've had someone said my head is shaped like an egg. Like, isn't that a good thing? Isn't that the ideal head shape? Anyways, um, so I'm going to talk about my experience having anxiety, having depression, maybe having ADHD. I don't know. I might even be autistic. Um, like I remember in high school I had this friend that actually was autistic. He had Asperger's syndrome, and we shared. Well, I guess it was mainly just this one, maybe two interests of mainly learning languages, but also kind of geography. Um, and he was saying, I guess just because of that, hey, you might have autism too, but I guess just because we share interests doesn't mean that's the case, because I know one thing we didn't have in common. Sorry, I tend to go off topic a lot. I know that. Is like he was saying he had this one go-to comfort food, which for him was just plain old chicken and rice. I'm not like that at all. I like my food well seasoned. I like Indian food and Thai food. Okay? Like, I like me some good vindaloo. I like me some good tumka. If you even know what that is. I like food that normal people can't pronounce, okay? Um, like King Pet Pet Young. I think that's translates to spicy basil duck curry. I want to say. Anyways, um, my Thai is a little iffy. Um, So I guess I could easily like make a 5 hour video about this, but it's already like 3 minutes 50 seconds in, and I've just been rambling about nonsense. So I wanted to keep this short and sweet. I wanted to keep this maybe, you know, at most an hour, but ideally like around 30 minutes. I don't know. We'll see. Um, so yeah, when I was honestly, I think growing up, my life has been pretty fine, just normal. I've always been, introverted, but I had friends. I've had this one good friend I've had since first grade. Um, I've had him over to my house a lot. I've been to his house sometimes, not nearly as much, but I remember for Halloween I would go to his house sometimes, a few years. And that would be fun. I remember playing Minecraft at his house one time. I think that was fun. I have a lot of good memories from my childhood, like my early childhood. Um, yeah, I just I think I got in trouble at school, probably more than average, just because I wanted to be funny. I guess deep down, I didn't even realize it at the time. I wanted to fit in, and I thought if I try and be funny, it'll make people like me. It was more of a subconscious thing. Like I didn't even realize it. Um, I've always been a sensitive person too, like very sensitive. You could say hypersensitive if you want. Um, and I don't have many memories from kindergarten. But one I do have is I got upset. I have no idea what I got upset about. I just remember I was upset. I was crying, and I remember literally being on the floor, basically rolling on the floor crying. And the teacher said, "You need to calm down." I couldn't. No matter how hard I try, I couldn't. That's just how I am. Whenever, or at least how I was. Whenever I got upset as a kid, um, I couldn't calm down. I literally could not. And that's why to this day it still kind of traumatizes me. Um, of course I'm over it now, but when I was a kid, I got sad. My parents would tell me stop crying, but they would say it, kind of in a yelling tone, and that would just make it worse, because I feel like they're just giving me psychological warfare. Um, that and don't talk back to me, because like what am I not allowed to stand up for myself? Am I, you know, it's like in a court of law, you're allowed a lawyer, you're allowed a jury, you're allowed all these things, but what? Just that seems ageist to just say don't talk back to me just because you're my parent. Like I'm not allowed to explain myself. I never understood that. I still don't understand that. I don't think when I have kids, I don't plan on ever telling that to my kids. I don't plan on ever telling them don't talk back to me. I'll word it differently. I'll say, don't try and I guess I don't know how to word it, but basically don't try and falsely explain yourself. Don't try and deceive me, I guess would be a good way of wording it. Um or just straight up don't lie to me, or maybe just don't talk when I'm talking, but I would give them a chance to stand up for themselves. So anyways, Jesus, right, 7 minutes 53 seconds. So I guess when my anxiety got bad I guess it started in middle school. And that's when I started to have panic attacks. Like, I don't know, actually I do kind of remember like the first one I had in a way. I think it was kind of there's a thing called caffeine induced anxiety, which I did not learn about until darn well after I should have. And I remember having a Starbucks drink that night. And I went to bed feeling fine, but then I got up feeling like literally I was about to have a heart attack or die. And the thought of that just made it worse. And yeah, I went into my parents' room. I was just breaking down, crying, just saying, I feel like I'm gonna die or something weird like that. And I felt really jittery. And they just said, it's all in your head. And then I don't think they mentioned panic attacks, but I think they just mentioned the caffeine. And I was like, but I still realized it was okay, and that helped me calm down. But I remember this one time, I think it just happened all of a sudden this other time. Yeah, I was just sitting, and all of a sudden I just felt really weird. And that's when I think I was introduced to the term of a panic attack. But I remember all throughout middle school, I would just randomly have these times when I felt like I was like going to die. It's very hard to describe, but I just felt like impending doom just randomly. And sometimes it would come on in different ways. and like I felt like I had to shake my leg, like, well, I can't show you, but like that, just to keep myself from alive or something. I don't know. Um, and um, other times it would come about where it would literally feel like all of a sudden, and I remember asking to leave class for this at least a few times, at least twice. And like I literally left school for panic attacks. It was like it would all of a sudden, like my state of consciousness would switch from reality to like full on laughy gas dream mode, and it would freak me out. Um, and I just felt like it was like everything around me just like got blurry and just slowed down. It's one of the scariest things you can experience. Um, and I remember, I don't know why this specifically triggers me. Maybe it's because of the dim lighting, but I was raised Catholic. I don't consider myself Catholic anymore. I just consider myself a non-denominational Christian. I'm still very much a devout Christian, but non-denominational. Um, but I was raised Catholic against my will. I'm not saying that in a really harsh way, but just factually. Um, and so I went to a Catholic school growing up. That was elementary and middle school, and a Catholic high school too. Um, and at this Catholic middle school, every Thursday we would go to church, because there was a church literally right by this school. And every time I go to church, I couldn't even stand up because I don't know why. Just church really triggered me. It just really, every time I went in church, and I remember this one time too. I was with my family. I was with my parents at church. I don't know why. I think it was either Easter or something. It was, some holiday or some reason why, because we didn't regularly go to church because I went to church on Thursday. My parents decided, oh, because you're going to church on Thursday at this school, that's good enough. You don't need to go to church on Sunday. And so, but that one time it was the same thing. And I guess they kind of forced me to stand up. They were genuinely getting angry at me, even though I don't know how much they realized how awful I felt standing up. I felt like I was going to pass out um, any moment. Um, but yeah, so that's that. Um, but during this time too, I guess there was a positive thing is I found out about Jesus, and this came about through Christian testimonies. And this video is already getting a little long. So long story short, let's start out with a channel called The Call for an Uprising, which he was like what you'd call a conspiracy theorist. Even though I do think there's a lot of truth to it, I've since realized I think in some of his videos he's taking things too far, like saying Rubik's cubes are evil because they represent Saturn's cubes. Like, what the heck? It's a cube. It's a geometric shape. It's a platonic solid. It's a convenient shape. Like, if you want to prove Rubik's cubes are somehow evil, like, try better. But anyways, so and it was Bill Visa's 23 Minutes in Hell, and he had a prayer at the end to give your life to Jesus, and I did because I started praying a lot when I was having these panic attacks, and yeah, and so I gave my life to Jesus, and I've never had a true panic attack like that in a very long time. And I'd also struggled with masturbation, and I'd overcome that for a while, until it came back very recently. I'll talk about that later. And so, yeah, and I guess starting out as a Christian, I think things were a lot better. Um, with that being said, though, in high school, I think high school may very well have been the most antisocial I've ever been in my life. I don't know why. I went to an all boys high school. Um, I don't know. I still talk to people a little bit, but just very little. I had this one friend I made at first who had a shared interest of memes. I used to have a meme account. Um, and then I also met who was my roommate for my second year at college. Um, he was from my high school. And I had this other guy um, who I became friends with. I went to Dave and Buster's with him over last summer. Um, but overall, I mean, I feel like I wasn't really talking to people that much at all. And I guess in middle school it's kind of the same. And I just, I guess I just didn't feel like it. As simple as that. Um, and then eventually got to the point where I grew in my faith enough during high school, because I guess it was actually really during high school when I really gave my life to Jesus. It was like early 2019, I want to say. And so, of course, eventually I realized I need to share the gospel with these people that are around me at this high school, because, yeah, it's a Catholic high school. You'd expect people know the basics, but, you know, when I was in Catholic school, I didn't really care much about God growing up, to be completely honest. I mean, if you ask me, I'd probably say, yeah, God's important to me, but in reality, looking back, that wasn't the case. And, you know, I heard some disturbing stories about people's sexual encounters, people doing drugs, doing edibles, um, vaping. Our school literally got in the news for hazing. So, long story short, basically what I'm trying to say here is the people at this high school, a lot of them were not good Christians. Some of them were. The one friend that I went to Dave and Buster's with, he definitely seemed to actually care about God. But all in all, I think a lot of them were not. And yeah, and I feel like I've always struggled with evangelism, sharing the gospel. It just has freaked me out a lot. And so, anyways, so a lot of my anxiety I've experienced over my life has come from me being a Christian, actually. And there have been a few occasions, mostly recently, I've just been basically yelling at God, because I've come to the realization, wait a second here. I know the prosperity gospel is false. I know, sure, I'm not supposed to follow God so that my life is easier. But I sure as heck didn't think I'm supposed to follow God and expect hell on earth in return. I'm supposed to believe God loves me. God is my Father. Why does He want that for me? Because ever since I followed God, I guess I feel like there have been like several phases of anxiety, if you will. And so like the first phase, well, I guess maybe the very first is just getting really probably too deep into conspiracy theories. And that probably affected what had to come, because that made me just in an anxious and legalistic mindset, thinking that, you know, anything remotely secular is evil. Like video games are evil, TV of all sorts is evil, secular music of all sorts is evil, the sinful, bad, haram. Sorry, I don't want to be offensive, but it just came out. Um, so anyways, and then later I saw this channel. I've mentioned this before. I think I mentioned him in a positive context before because I was still deceived by him. His channel name is Pendulum Gonde, and he posts testimonies of people that have dreams and visions of hell, in like a text-to-speech voice, because apparently they're translated from other languages. I guess that's just most convenient for him. And you might say, oh, well, that's a good thing. Sure, if they were actually truly from God. And I'm not saying these are people are making up these dreams. They could very well be having these dreams, but they're just from legalistic spirits. And so, yeah, these videos would say things like, you know, a lot of them would say if you're a woman, you have to wear a dress and it has to go below your knees. And even if you're a man, you can't wear shorts, you can't wear sleeveless shirts. I think some of them would even say you can't wear a t-shirt. It even went as far as to say you can't wear jeans for some reason. Like, what's wrong with jeans? Like, as a man, like, I'm not talking about skinny jeans. It would just say, like, any jeans are sinful. It's like, okay, I can understand skinny jeans. Like, yeah, it's skin tight. Okay, I get it. But, like, regular masculine jeans, I don't get that at all. And yeah, and for a while I would be scared. I'd be overly concerned about how I dress because I wanted to be overly modest. There would be a time where I wouldn't even wear deodorant because I thought deodorant was lustful. I thought, it's artificial scents. I thought it came from the marine kingdom. I guess I'm just a very gullible person, if I'm being honest. And then I get really hard on myself just every time I realize something I've been doing is sin. Like, I remember one time having a conversation to my parents. I think it was before they took me to work, saying, I just realized, Mom, having pop is a sin. How did I not know this all along? Why did God not convict me? But I saw it in a YouTube video, so it must be a sin. Looking back, that sounds so stupid, but because it was in the form of a hell testimony, it wasn't just some random Yahoo saying, oh, pop is a sin, don't drink pop. If it was like that, I probably wouldn't believe it. But because it was in the form of an actual hell testimony, I believed it. And so then there was that. And then eventually, it's kind of funny because through this channel, Pendulum Gonde, I saw this other channel, Michaela Cooper. And to be fair, I think in some ways she is still on the legalistic side, but not nearly as much as Pendulum Gonde. And she has actually even criticized him for his videos. And a long story short, I got to message her on Telegram, or if that's what it's called, the chatting app. And she basically asked me, have you been watching Pendulum Gonde's videos? And I said, yes, but I try to justify it, but I said something along the lines of, I really think they're true. And long story short, she somehow, I don't know how, it was a miracle, she must have been praying for me, managed to convince me that these are not from God. So I'm very thankful for that. But as much as I was thankful for that, it led to some confusion afterwards, and I guess that's, to be fair, what led to me overcorrecting, which I could get to later. Like, I don't want to get into all the details, but I guess I was asking God inappropriate questions I probably shouldn't be asking him about if certain things were sin or not. And that led me, I guess I'll just jump around in time here. I'll skip forward. Recently, I just feel like I had trouble falling asleep because I just, recently I've had this desire, this sexual desire. Whenever I just fall asleep, it just comes to me. And I've for a while I've been without that, but it seemed like it just randomly came back. It's just there, and that got me starting to think. Well, at first I was like, well, what would be so wrong? I'm a man, so I deal with wet dreams. I'm not trying to be disturbing here. I feel like I have to say this, and by the way, I just want to say I'm sorry I'm not looking at the camera a lot. I don't know why I can't think straight when I'm staring at it. I have to look away to think. That's just how I am. So I was wondering, like, well, if I have wet dreams, and so it's clearly not a sin to just lose sperm. I know there's the Bible in Genesis chapter 38 talks about Onan, and it says he spilled it on the ground and the Lord killed him. But in the context, that actually isn't specifically what he got killed for. It was for failing to fulfill the duty of a brother in that context. So it wasn't just because he was spilling his sperm on the ground. It wasn't just because he was using a birth control method. It was because he had the duty to produce children, but he didn't. And that's what I've heard, and that's what I believe. And so, I guess I won't get into all the details. I don't want this video to be too long. But long story short, I guess I just started thinking, okay, so basically, if I'm not looking at someone with lust, if I'm not watching pornography or looking at Instagram models, which is what I used to do when I only watched pornography like twice, and the 2 times I did, I couldn't even, get off to it, because I was like, there's like a guy here that's like, he's got to be at least 40. He's showing off his ding dong. That's disgusting. Like, that's gay. That's not only gay, that is, like, that guy could be my dad. That's, no. Yeah. So, anyways, so I was thinking, like, okay, so as long as I'm not looking at anything, then I'm not looking with lust, which I know is a sin. As long as I'm not actually having sex, of course, okay, so that's a sin, but as long as I'm not, then I don't have to worry about that. If I'm just, basically my thought process was, if I am literally just merely touching myself, I don't think the Bible explicitly says that is a sin. And perhaps it would be difficult for it to and still be appropriate. The Bible does use the word sensuality, but it's like, well, what does sensuality refer to? Does it refer to just merely touching yourself in a sexual way, or is it referring to actual sex before marriage? Because sex before marriage, you actually have the visual component and far more tactile components, and even, pornography or just regular masturbation, you usually have lust, looking with lust that is associated with it. But I feel like, okay, if I take that out of the equation, I'm just left with just touching myself. And the Bible doesn't explicitly say that's a sin. And so this is recently I felt like, okay, so is that really wrong then? And so I felt like I asked God, and to be fair, the first dozens of times I asked God, I don't know why I ask God the same question over and over. I know the definition of a fool is you do the same thing over and over again and you expect different results. But I guess I felt like my thought process was, because I know in the past I've literally felt conviction for doing things I know now are not sins. Like, as a matter of fact, I know this looks weird. I like eating weird stuff, okay? This is just a regular dessert. There was a time in the past where I would eat this, all right? This exact thing, whatever this is. And I would feel horribly convicted. And the funny thing too is, I don't know if you know what Pepperidge Farm Chessman crackers are, or cookies, whatever. I would eat them out of the big bag and feel perfectly fine. But like, I got them individually wrapped. I would eat them individually wrapped. For whatever reason, I would feel horribly convicted. Like, randomly, about random things, I would feel horribly convicted in the past. I don't know why. I feel like maybe it was demons just trying to mess with me. But because of that, I felt like, yeah, I'm asking the same question over and over again. I'm getting the same results. God's telling me, yes, it's a sin. But how do I know I'm really trusting him? How do I know? I just always have that doubt in my mind. I guess that's just how I am. I guess I feel like I do have religious OCDs to a certain extent, where I have that, I've found online one of the symptoms of it is intolerance of uncertainty. I definitely have that, where it's like, I need to know that I know that I know. I need to know for 101% sure. And it was like, well, how do I know for sure I'm really trusting God? And it got to the point where this one night I was like, you know what? Yeah, I was perfectly relaxed about it, where every time else I was kind of anxious, and I was like, yeah, I don't see anything wrong with this. Because really, I'm just merely touching myself. Is that really so bad? And you know what? In the past, I probably wasn't trusting God because I was asking him over and over again. So you know what? This time, whatever the first thing I hear from God is, I'm going to believe it. If he says it's okay, I'm not going to ask anymore. I'm going to go through with it. And sure enough, I asked God, and I felt like he was telling me, yes, it's okay. And I was like, okay, I don't need to ask any further questions. And the scary thing is, I don't know why I didn't feel even convicted at all about this. And it was like, ever since then, for several weeks, for probably a month, including today, unfortunately, it has been on and off of me thinking it's a sin, thinking it's not a sin. Every time I think it's not a sin, I'm just more sure than the last, and it's going back and forth. And eventually, though, today, I feel like I finally realized, okay, this is a sin. I need to stop. I don't know how. I feel like, I've eventually come to the realization, I'm trusting God enough. It's not my anxiety. It's not a legalistic spirit telling me it's not a sin, or telling me it is a sin, rather. I'm way overthinking this, like I do with a lot of things. But yeah, and I literally was yelling at God once, just because I was like, why would you allow me to be deceived? I thought I could trust you. I don't care if I ask you 1,000 times a day, is this a sin? You should tell me every single one of those 1,000 times, yes, it's a sin. I don't care, because I should be able to trust you. This isn't communist China where I don't get to know the laws. This is a matter of heaven and hell, and you love me, and you should be able to tell me your rules. That's what I expect. So that was pretty frustrating. Anyways, let's go back in time now to what I was talking about. So after I got deceived into that legalistic part of my life, there are a lot of things, but I guess the next thing is, so then for a while I've wanted to have a girlfriend, and I always had this, well, not always, but for a while I've had this crush on this one girl from my middle school, elementary school, and I had her on Snapchat. And so I decided, why not reach out to her and talk to her. So I did, and she was getting back to me, but eventually it got to a point where it would take her like several weeks to get back to me. I don't know why. But I, and the funny thing is, I don't even think I was asking God this. I think I had such strong feelings for her. I found her so attractive that I just randomly, all of a sudden, one time, felt like God was telling me, I want you to marry her. And I guess, to be fair, part of this was I was under the deception. I feel like this is probably a pretty common deception of believing there is only one person I can marry, that God is predetermined for me. I don't get to choose. It is God's choice. God knows who's best. God has one person for me, and I am the one person for that person. And honestly, for me, that was honestly kind of a comforting thought, because then I realized I don't have to worry about competition. I don't have to worry about finding someone. God will provide. And I can be 100% sure of that, because there is one person for me, and I am that one person for that other person, if that makes sense. But of course, later, and the weird thing is, I was asking God, okay, I want you to give me some external miraculous signs that this is the case, that that I'm going to marry her. And so it was the summer before last summer, I think. And yeah. And I was going to University of South Carolina, on the way to University of South Carolina for my sister's move-in. And on the way down, I remember praying about this and feeling kind of anxious and uncertain about it. And I saw, which is something I specifically asked for, she has an uncommon name. So I asked God, her nickname isn't that uncommon. If I see that like spelled out somewhere, I'll take that as evidence. And sure enough, we passed through a town in Ohio on the way down that was her nickname, and it had it in big letters on a water tower. And then not only that, but to make matters more complicated, I would just randomly, I do this a lot actually, so it's not that weird. Randomly had the desire to like go on Google Earth and look around where I was in Columbia, South Carolina. And so I did that, and I found, I think it was a Catholic school, I want to say. It was named after some saint that had basically the same last name as her. It was a little different because it had an S at the end. It was 2 words instead of 1, but basically the same thing. And I was like, okay, this is kind of freaky. This must be evidence that God wants me to marry this person, right? But I mean, I could, well, if I close out of this, it'll stop the recording. I think it's safe to say, I feel like I've realized this a while ago, but it's safe to say now that God does not want me to marry her. Well, I guess the main reason I found out is because I saw on her Snapchat story one time a picture of her with her boyfriend. Just basically, it was XOXO. It was obvious it was her boyfriend, not her brother or friend. If it is her, okay, I won't make that joke. Anyways. So yeah, so that happened. And then after that, this is kind of unrelated, but so I've always, well, not always, but for a while, have had wet dreams. Um, and of course, sometimes they would have a visual aspect, often. And I would tell this to someone from this Telegram group that was run by Michaela Cooper, and she was saying, "Oh, it's a demonic attack," and I believed it because I feel like it's sexual, it's lustful, that's sinful. It doesn't matter. I can't control it. It's it's lust, and so I felt like that's how I started to believe I need deliverance. I am demonically possessed, and the thing is, I actually had someone do deliverance to me over a video call, and the only thing that had happened is I got really nervous because I was freaking out that I was going to start manifesting. But that's it. That's all that ever happened the whole time. And she was going at it for, like at least 5 minutes straight, I'd say. Maybe not that long. I don't know. Maybe I'm overestimating because of how anxious I was. But yeah, she was just constantly commanding demons to leave me, and nothing was happening. But then this one time, and I guess another thing about my anxiety is I'm really hard on myself. I feel like God's telling me do things that are extreme. Like, it's really funny. Like, this one time I was thinking, like, what is the most extreme thing I could think of that God could want me to do? I was thinking, what if I were to raise my hand in the middle of class and ask my professor in the middle of class, do you know Jesus as your Savior? Just randomly in the middle of class. It would be random, it would be inappropriate, kind of, but, I feel like it would be standing up for Jesus, it would be showing boldness. I feel like that would be really cool. That would be honoring Jesus like nothing else. And I remembered being in this one class, and my instructor gave a presentation, and I raised my hand in class, having complete faith, trying my best that I was going to ask this professor that question. And of course, he called on me. I freaked out. I got too scared. I just said, I just wanted to say, nice job on the presentation. Just like that, pretty much. And of course, he was like, thank you. And then when I walked out, I was literally crying because of how disappointed I was. I felt like, even though I literally thought of that idea myself, but I still felt like God wanted me to do it just because of how hard I am on myself, how extreme I can be sometimes. So anyways, another thing I felt like God wanted me to do, which maybe is a bit extreme and not effective, is just like, there's like sidewalks, like a lot of colleges that connect building to building. Mine has like really wide sidewalks, kind of, if that makes sense, that are like on the main campus, because the campus is kind of small. And so I felt like it would be really good to like basically preach the gospel really loud, like almost yelling, but not like screaming at the top of your lungs, but like just loud, projecting, I guess would be a good way of putting it. on these sidewalks so that other people can hear me. And so, and the scary thing is I felt like God was telling me to do this at like 2 a.m. I felt like, do I really have to do this now? But I felt like God was telling me yes. And there would be like almost no one outside, of course. But I felt like I had to do it anyways. And it was bringing me down mentally. It was mentally draining, but I felt like I had to do it. And as I was doing this, I remember this one time just randomly feeling like God was telling me to go to the downtown area of the town that my college is in. As I was on my way back trying to preach the gospel, it was probably because of all the anxiety just building up. But I thought it was a demon. I just randomly started literally dry heaving while I was doing this. And my mom has told me, yeah, if you're really anxious, you can sometimes feel like you have to throw up. It's random. It comes about in different ways. But I thought, I've seen videos of people going under deliverance, and almost all of them, they throw up. That's like how it happens usually. They like start shaking, and sometimes they start screaming. Sometimes they start rolling on the floor. Sometimes they even get violent at the people that are doing the deliverance. But then eventually they throw up. And then once they throw up, sometimes that's it. Sometimes they lay on the floor looking unconscious for a little bit. And but yeah. And so I thought that was what was happening to me, even though I still had like complete control of myself otherwise, and I was still living a good Christian life. It's not like, but I thought because I was having these wet dreams, I must have demons. And so that started a big phase of my life. I remember immediately after that happened, I would go into the bathroom of the nearest building, and I would, for a while, I don't know how long, maybe like 20 minutes, I was like on the toilet just trying to get myself to throw up because I felt like I had to. I felt like I had demons, and this would be a recurring theme. I'd recurrently go to the toilet thinking I have demons. I need to get them out. I don't know why they're not coming out. They're being stubborn, but I need to get them out because I am clearly demonically possessed. And the reason I kept thinking I was demonically possessed is this is the scary thing. This is scary how much power my own mind has over my body. But like every time I'd say, every demon I command you to get out of me now in Jesus' name, I would start shaking uncontrollably and dry heaving uncontrollably. It felt like, I swear to God, it felt like I was not controlling it. It felt like there's a demon inside me that is causing this to happen. And sometimes there would be other freaky things happening too. Sometimes I would start rolling around. I remember this one time I'd do it, and I felt like uncontrollably I was doing this. That was it. I wouldn't actually choke myself because I felt like, yeah, I have power over these demons. These demons can't actually choke me. They're just trying to choke me. They're just trying to take control of me and choke me. But I swear, I literally felt like this was happening uncontrollably. I was holding myself almost in a chokehold. But that was it. I didn't actually end up choking myself at all. And in case you're wondering, it's funny. I only ever actually threw up once, and it was only a little bit. It was after I had some really spicy Indian food, which that'll do it. I guess I have an iron stomach, as I say. So I'm trying to figure out what's next then. Oh yeah, so then after all this, just basically a recurring theme of my life is just getting frustrated from not hearing from God properly. And so this one time it got so bad, I don't even know what I was talking about. I was just trying to hear from God. It was just going back and forth, basically. I just got so angry. I started yelling. I was like, God, I don't care if you tell me to chop my head off. If that's what I feel like you're telling me, I'll do it. because I didn't actually mean it, but I said it out of frustration because I just felt like, basically my point was, I want the first thing I feel like I'm hearing from you, God, to be actually you. And even if it's ridiculous, you know what, I'm just going to believe it's you. And I do remember what really frustrated me is I went downstairs, and yeah, I probably shouldn't need God to tell me about these little things. Um, I was hungry, and I saw, I guess you know, I was overly worried about gluttony. I was overly worried about a lot of things that I know are sin. And I saw there were some brownies, and I wanted some, but I felt like I needed to ask God so I wasn't sinning by having too much sugar. Hey, God, is it okay if I put a little icing on this? I know that sounds extreme to ask that, but I felt like I needed to. I felt like God was telling me yes. And I ate it, and after I ate it, I felt like God was telling me, you had too much sugar. I was like, oh my gosh. And so I just like ran up to my room. I was like so frustrated. I was like, God, I don't care if you tell me to chop my fingers off. I literally will if this keeps going. Like, I just want the first thing I feel like you're telling me to be true. I was just so frustrated because I wasn't hearing from God properly. I didn't know why. I was trying to hear from God for a very long time. And sure enough, I felt like there was this voice telling me, go chop your fingers off. No, don't get me wrong. I knew it wasn't God. I knew it was like a demon probably speaking to me. I didn't care. I felt like I need to prove my point. I need to prove to God I'm not messing around. And so I didn't even care where it came from. I was like, you know what, God, I mean it. I mean what I said. I'm not happy. And so what I did, I went downstairs. I was trying to look for like wire clippers, like you know what those are, right? I couldn't find them. Maybe it was a good thing. So I think I went back upstairs. I tried like just using a pocket knife, which wasn't effective. I tried just biting on my pinky really hard. It wasn't effective, just hurt. I left a dent, sure, but and so then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go downstairs. I know there's an axe or a hatchet, a little axe. And so I'm just gonna get that hatchet, and I'm just gonna start with my least important finger, which I thought, you know, probably my left pinky finger. And you know what? Maybe this is going to be, I was thinking, maybe this is going to be like the story of Abraham sacrificing his son Isaac. Maybe God's going to stop me. Maybe I just need to prove to God I mean what I say. God's going to stop me. Maybe this is all just a test. Because, you know, like Abraham sacrificing his son Isaac, that would have been pretty wrong. That would have been pretty awful if he actually did. But God told him to, and he did it, and God stopped him. So I felt like God could do the same thing for me here. And in a way, I mean, I have all my fingers to this day. But I don't think God wanted me to do this. So, well, I know God didn't want me to do this. Yeah, so I got the hatchet out, and my legs literally turned to jello. I was just so nervous. I think because I was so nervous, I didn't hit very hard at all. Luckily. And then eventually, I still bruised my pinky, but that was it. And then eventually I got to the point where I was like, okay, God, I can't do this. Do you really want me to do this? And then I felt like God was telling me no, and I felt like God was telling me to repent, which probably was him. But of course, that made me kind of, I don't know if it made me more frustrated. I feel like, honestly, I probably realized, okay, yeah, I did something wrong. And then, so yeah, those are mainly all the main phases of anxiety that have existed throughout my life. And I guess, oh yeah. But then I've also dealt with depression and suicidal thoughts among this. I don't necessarily even know what has caused it, but well, I do remember this one time being at work, which I work in produce at Nino Salvaggio, which is a local grocery store chain. Um, I don't know if I should have said the specific name of it. It just kind of came out. Um, but anyways, I remember just randomly feeling like God wanted to speak to me, or like God wanted me to tell people God bless you, which is risky because I'm not allowed to talk religion or politics, of course, as an employee, um, especially not to customers. But I felt like, sometimes God wanted me to do that. And I did do that sometimes. Luckily, I never got caught. Um, and um, I just felt like I have this like paranoid feeling like God wants to speak to me while I was working. It would be very distracting. And I just get very angry at God. Like, why do you need to speak to me while I'm working? I'm working. I'm doing a good thing. I don't work as a porn actor. I work in produce. I'm doing a good job. Um, and yeah, and I just never understand it. And one time it just got so bad. I just really got on my nerves so much that I just broke down. I on my break, I went into a bathroom stall, was on the floor crying, thinking of hurting myself. Um, Luckily I didn't. Um, just begging God, it seems like I'm constantly asking you, to make this all stop, and I really mean it now. I give up. I give up. Because I feel like I'm in a trial like Job, but I can't get out of it, and I give up. I don't care what the consequences are. I give up. I want out. And that was basically the same way, although I wasn't as depressed, but I was still as frustrated. I would say, amidst when I first realized for the first time that um, masturbating to nothing was a sin, and I was pretty sure of it. Even though after that happened, I still fell into it again. Just became more sure it wasn't a sin. Went back and forth, but now I think finally at a place where I've accepted it as a sin. I need to move on. Um. So yeah, all right. So this video is getting kind of long, but there's really the one final thing I really want to talk about is so recently I've been on dating apps just to try and find a potential partner, a woman of God who truly loves the Lord and someone I'd get along with well. Um, Someone that could have my future children. And so I've been on these dating apps and I've got very few likes. I don't know why. Um, Very few matches relative to the amount of people I'm liking. I don't know why. And I decided to use Facebook dating and just set my options so that everyone I see is Christian. And I've noticed a lot of people gave out their Snapchat in their bio. I decided to take advantage of that. I've added a lot of people on Snapchat. The problem is they either just stop talking to me after a while. Conversation dies out. It's not my fault. Most of the time. If it is, then I'm not leaving them on a question at least. And usually it's because they either said a swear word or something else that I noticed something in their stories that shows that they're not a good Christian. Um, but I would never leave someone on a question, never, because that is rude. And I would never block anyone for no reason, for no good reason. And even if I do have to block someone, usually I give them a warning first of all. That's my policy, and I never leave someone unopened. If I'm busy, I don't even open chats. I don't want to give them. I want to make them feel like I'm intentionally ignoring them. And I guess, to be fair, I kind of expect others to do the same to me, even though they don't know my policies. I guess it's different for everyone. But yeah, I've been blocked by, I guess, long story short, there have only been 2 people that have been honest and nice enough to say they're not interested in me that I've added on Snapchat or elsewhere. Everyone else either has never added me back in the first place, added me and never talked to me in the first place, just stopped talking to me after a while, and a lot of them have blocked me after a good conversation. Some of them I've been really nice to. I've literally you know what? I might as well say this. Whatever. I've literally shown my mom a conversation I've had with a girl. And I was asking her, what did I do wrong? Why did she block me? And my mom just said, I don't know. You were actually being really nice. And so I don't get it. And because I'm a sensitive individual, for a while I've been just crying and begging God to tell me what is wrong with me. And I've gone through like every thought in my head. Yeah, I've asked myself, am I ugly? And luckily I've got affirmation from a lot of people. I'm not. But I do still feel self-conscious about, I guess, mainly 2 things about maybe 3. I guess I'm not in great shape. I guess that's the 3rd. But I mean, I feel like you can't tell what my belly looks like just by looking at me when I'm fully clothed. At least that's good. But I do know I have acne. And I do know my beard, it just grows kind of messy. But I still want to keep it because, I don't know, I like it. It keeps me warm. It gets cold up here and it keeps me warm. But at the same time, I know it looks like the Amazon rainforest growing on my face. And so, yeah, I do feel self-conscious sometimes about those 3 things. And so I don't know. I don't know why it seems like no one's interested in me. And that's recently has made me really depressed. Just, I feel like, before I felt like before I started these dating apps right before, I felt like I was perfectly ready for a girlfriend. I felt like I'd finally gotten all my stuff together. And I was in a good place finally. But that all changed. And I tried to make friends with girls in real life, and they blocked me too. And so it's just like, what the heck? And I can't help but feel like there must be something wrong with me. I must be bothering these girls. They must see me as a toxic individual. If it was just a few people block me, okay, that's their problem. Yeah, maybe they're not interested in me, but for everyone to not be interested in me, and I guess that was another thing. I was telling other people why people block me, and they were saying, oh, this girl, she was only giving you a few word responses. That means she's not interested. And I was like, but everyone I talk to only gives me few word responses. So you're telling me everyone I talk to isn't interested in me, even at first? What the heck? What's wrong with me, And so that's my most recent struggle, I'd say, is I feel like I'm a nice person, I'm an honest person, I'm a loyal person. Um, I would never block anyone for no good reason. I would never leave someone unopened for no good reason. I feel like my only problems are I'm really sensitive, maybe, well, not maybe, pretty much definitely I am maybe a bit desperate and needy. Sometimes I'm working on it. Trying not to be, um, trying to force myself not to be. And self-confidence, I lack self-confidence and self-esteem, but I feel like that wouldn't be a problem if I just got the expected results I want, you know? And so that's been really hurting my feelings recently. It's like every girl I talk to isn't interested in me. And I've talked to a lot. And it's like I'm liking so many people on these dating apps. Why are so few of them liking me back? So yeah, I just don't get it. And part of me, you know, well, if making a YouTube video worked for that one guy who thought he was ugly, maybe it'll work for me. That's my thought process, at least. Maybe this will go viral, at least a little bit, at least enough. You know, I only need one person to like me. That's what a lot of people tell me. You only need one. And I suppose that's true. So, if you want to reach out in comments and say anything, feel free. Other than that, I feel like I've said everything I wanted to say. Yeah, so I just hope this video has been inspirational to you, or touching to you. I mean, I guess not inspirational. I don't have a girlfriend. I've never even dated anyone, and I'm 20 years old. But maybe that'll change, and maybe I'm hoping that'll change, and I can upload that on YouTube maybe. So we'll see. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say. So goodbye.